So the mass purge of federal workers to punish the Democrats for the government shutdown, that's hit a bit of a speed bump. But make no mistake about it, federal workers have still received their layoff notices. They still have received their RIF notices. But two things really has slowed down the momentum. Number one, the federal judge in California that has imposed a restraining order from the RIF proceedings. That's more of a temporary one. The second thing, though, is the OMB Director. He's losing a little bit of influence because what he is saying is not actually coming into fruition. And we're talking about Russ Vought. Absolutely. OMB Director whose goal was to traumatize workers, whose goal was to make federal workers wake up in the morning and not have the desire to go into the office, to no longer work for the federal government. Now, where we're seeing cracks in his influence is OMB gave guidance to HHS to lay off about 8,000 workers. Those were the marching orders. About 8,000 people had to lose their job. HHS, they look at that and they're like, can't do that, chief. I can't do that. It's too deep. You're cutting too deep. So best we could do is, around 2,000, like 1,700. When it came to actually sending those RIFs, they ended up rescinding. So even though there was like an 80% drop in the number that they were supposed to hit, it was reduced again by half. So in actuality, what ended up happening is HHS, they exercised less than half. Less than 1,000 people received RIF notices. And even that, some of those might end up getting rescinded. So currently what we're seeing is the RIFs are largely paused due to the federal judge. Even in HHS, HHS first said, hey, listen, we're not affected by this because the unions that filed the lawsuit, they don't cover any of our workers. We're in the clear. But despite that, they're still pausing their RIFs largely, right? So many of these workers, they were furloughed. So how are they getting their RIF notice? That's like one of the big questions. How are you getting the RIF notice? Well, a lot of people are saying they came in through the mail. They had a mail packet. It was either a white or orange envelope from the agency. You open it up and boom, hey, you're getting laid off. And that's how they received it. Other workers, surprisingly, I've heard a few cases where people were receiving it from their personal email. Now, I know a lot of agencies are not going to want to do that because of the nature of the RIF notice, right? It's sensitive information in there. It's less secure to go to your Gmail or Hotmail. I don't know what you're working with. You got a Yahoo. It's a little bit less secure. So agencies don't really want to do that. Now, most of us know Russ Vought. We know him because he's the OMB director. We know him as the author, one of the main authors of Project 2025, notorious document. We also know him as the main guy who created Schedule F during President Trump's first term. That was the category you could put federal workers in that deal with policy so that you can strip away all their rights and make them an at-will employee. He designed that. And some people know him as the Grim Reaper. That's what they know him as now. Like, have you seen the most recent social media post as it pertains to the OMB director? President Trump posted it not too long ago. You can check it out. He appears in a black robe. He is the personification of death. Death of public programs and death of hundreds of thousands of middle-class jobs. It even shows a scene of zombies outside of the unemployment office. Those zombies are dressed in work attire, and it doesn't take a really big imagination to make the connection. That is how they're portraying federal workers. That's how they view federal workers. The administration, Russ, and really it's representative of a large chunk of America. More and more, it's becoming more popular to demonize and look at federal workers this way. This video that was shared, over 1 million views, well over 1 million views, but not everybody agrees with Russ Vought. There's a lot of federal agencies that are pushing back on his layoff plans. And it's not just HHS, it's a lot of them. Like, take, for example, EPA. EPA resisted. They said they had operational needs. There were functions that were essential and they could not ignore them. Then we saw Department of Interior. They were told to lay off a lot more people. They ended up laying off around 2,000. That's their intent anyway. You have the Department of Treasury, Department of Energy, same thing. They're blaming the funding complexities and mission-critical roles to delay or to reduce the future cuts because they are closer to the mission. Now you got OMB up there. Yeah, they're giving their guidance. The director is over there and they see things one way. But once you're at the agency level and you're interacting on a day-to-day basis with your staff and you understand the status of the missions that you're responsible for, it's a different perspective. So yeah, there is pushback. The GAO, the Government Accountability Office, which is essentially like the congressional watchdog, they have criticized his efforts to minimize the GAO when it comes to oversight, because that's what they do. They provide oversight. They also identify fraud, waste, and abuse. Now, I believe probably Russ Vought will lose some of his influence. He won't lose all of it, and it won't happen immediately, but I would say 6 to 12 months from now, as the consequences of these deep cuts, they start to materialize. They come into fruition. A lot of these public services, they're impacted in a negative way and they're not able to provide the service to the American public. When that happens and you're looking for someone to blame, who is going to take the blame? It will not be the president, probably not. You can look at someone like Russ Vought. He might end up taking the blame before too long. Now, I'm guessing this will probably happen sometime in the middle of 2026, maybe towards the end of 2026, but I do believe he will lose some of his influence. Now, speaking of consequences, right now, we're in the second longest government shutdown in the history of the government. Hundreds of thousands of workers are not getting paid. Now, ironically, members of Congress, they're still getting their paychecks. But we have some lawmakers that want to step forward and they want to share the pain because they caused the pain. Failure to discuss, failure to compromise. It's a congressional failure on the lawmakers. They want to share some of that pain. They're like, hey, you know what? I'm going to give up my paycheck. Do you know the percent in the Senate and in the House who decided to give up their paycheck? In the House of Representatives, 6%. In the Senate, 4%, meaning 4 senators. That's it. So when you hear that message like, we feel your pain, there's no pain being felt because the average person in Congress, their net worth is over $1 million. What's stopping every single one of them from just foregoing their pay? They want their paycheck, but they also want to keep the government shut down. So it's, a little ironic that way. Also, another thing is, even though members of Congress get paid, that doesn't mean that their staff is getting paid. They have staffs. They got people that work for them. They're working. A lot of them are working, and they're not getting paychecks either. So it seems like the only one who can benefit from getting paid for their work in the government, it happens to be congressional representatives. It happens to be lawmakers. And a lot of people are upset with that. You're probably upset with that. If you're not, I don't know why. You probably should be, right? Everyone in this country, if they're working, if they're doing administrative work, if they're doing laborious work, if they're exerting themselves, they're giving you their time, their energy, their attention, you should pay them. The work shouldn't be done for free. There's another word for that. So everyone should want their work to be paid for, and we shouldn't tolerate work that isn't paid for. So as far as the pay situation, if you want to know exactly what goes into that, who's getting paid, who's not getting paid, the reason why, more context, if that interests you, I want you to check this video out next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.